Have you ever watched a leaf fall? Not rushed by wind, not torn by force, but a gentle, spiraling descent, like a sigh made visible. There is no panic in its letting go, no regret in its release, only grace, only trust. That one leaf, yellowed with time, drifts away from the branch it once called home, and in its surrender, something ancient speaks to us, not through words, but through silence. Everything you have ever loved will one day fade. Everything that has held you captive, too, will pass. And this truth, this gentle, aching truth, is not something to be feared. It is something to be understood. Because if nothing lasts, then everything is precious. Every breath is a gift unpromised. Every moment, a miracle. Wearing the clothes of the ordinary. And in that knowing, something shifts. Not the world, but how you walk through it. We spend our lives clutching to memories, to identities, to dreams that refuse to evolve. We grip tight to the things we think define us, titles, roles, even pain, as if by holding tighter, we can escape the unraveling. But the unraveling is sacred. The unraveling is what gives shape to your becoming. You were not made to remain unchanged. Even the mountains are worn down by time, and the rivers do not flow the same path twice. There's a Zen saying, the bamboo bends in the wind, because it is empty inside. It is emptiness that gives it strength. It is not resistance that makes it survive, but its willingness to yield, to move, to adapt, to sway without breaking. And yet, how often do we break? Not from the weight of life, but from our refusal to bow before its impermanence. Look around you. The morning light that touches your window now will never return in quite the same way. The sound of your breath in this moment has never been heard before and never will again. Even this feeling you carry. Yes, that one, it is not permanent. It, too, will change like everything else. And if this makes you feel sorrow, let that sorrow be sacred. Let it carve you open like a seed breaks to become a tree. For grief, too, is a form of love, love stretched thin across time. It is the price we pay for having noticed something, for having cared. The cherry blossoms bloom only for a few weeks each spring, and yet their fleeting beauty is not diminished by its brevity. It is amplified. We gather to watch them, knowing they will fall. In their fall, they teach us everything we've tried to forget. That beauty and transience are not enemies. They are lovers. So why do we run from endings? Why do we treat closure like a wound instead of a whisper that says, it's time? We are taught to fear the last page, to dread the goodbye, to resist the season's turn, but a tree does not mourn the autumn. It lets its leaves go, like a prayer, trusting that what is meant to return will, and what does not was never meant to stay. The fear you feel in letting go, that is not weakness, that is love, meeting the edge of the unknown. It is your heart, remembering how vast it is, how it was never meant to stay small, never meant to hoard what was always passing through. Let this moment be what it is. Do not rush it. Do not dress it in expectations or name it too soon. Let it breathe. Like wind across water, like dusk descending, there is no need to force understanding. Some truths arrive only after everything else has fallen away. And when they come not with noise, but with stillness. You are not broken because things ended. You are not lost because something has changed. You are simply standing in the sacred hallway between what was and what will be. And if you can be quiet enough, if you can still the trembling in your chest, you might hear it, the sound of your soul rearranging itself to fit a new shape. The lotus grows from mud, but it does not apologize for the mire. It does not wish for cleaner beginnings. It rises because it was always meant to, and so are you. You are meant to rise, not despite the endings, but because of them. Life is not a straight line. It is a spiral, returning, revisiting, reforming. You will meet the same lesson again and again, but each time you will be different. Each time you will be readier. Each time a little more awake. So, let the impermanence become your teacher. Let it show you how to hold and release, how to love without possession, how to be here fully without needing it to last forever. Because nothing does, and that is not the tragedy, that is the miracle. When you stop needing something to stay, you begin to truly see it. You taste your tea like it's the first sip. You watch the sky as if you'll never see it again. You touch another's hand with reverence, knowing it might be the last time. And suddenly, everything becomes holy. A child's laugh, a raindrop rolling down the glass, a tear you didn't expect. They all become portals. You no longer chase moments. You bow to them. You welcome them as guests who were never yours to keep. And in that bowing, something unlocks. Not just peace, but presence. Not just wisdom, but wonder. The truth is, you've never needed more time. You've only needed to be present to the time you already have. And you've never been too late. You've only been too distracted. But here you are, now, breathing, feeling awake. Isn't that enough? Let go of the illusion that you must fix everything. Some things are meant to fall apart. Some doors are meant to close. Some stories were only meant to be a chapter, not the whole book. And that's okay, because what matters is not what remains, but what you became. Through it all, the seasons will continue to turn. The moon will continue to wane, and you will continue to unfold, not in spite of change, but because of it. The wind does not ask the tree for permission before it comes. The wave does not apologize for pulling away from the shore. Nature does not resist its own rhythm, and neither should you. So soften the grip, soften the story, soften the belief that permanence equals safety. Even the stars collapse eventually. Even the mountains bow to erosion. Even the sun, that unshakable fire in the sky, will one day burn out. And yet, here we are, alive. Not in spite of impermanence, but because of it. We exist not in one eternal, unchanging form, but in a dance of becoming. From baby to child, child to adult, adult to elder. You have died and been reborn more times than you can count. And each version of you was a necessary shedding. Who you were was beautiful, and who you are now is sacred. And who you are becoming, you don't even know yet. But you don't have to, because the river doesn't ask where it ends. It just flows. And maybe that's what freedom really is. Not the absence of loss, but the absence of resistance to it. Imagine how light you'd feel if you stopped carrying everything. If you stopped dragging the past behind you like an old, tattered coat you no longer need. Let it fall. Let it return to the soil, like autumn leaves dissolving into earth. Not wasted, but feeding the roots of something new. Your sorrow is not a failure. It's just proof that you've loved. Your confusion is not a defect. It's proof that you're still open, and your fear, that's simply the edge, the outer rim of all you've known, asking you to step beyond it. Step anyway, even if your legs shake, even if your voice trembles. Step with the trembling. That's how every great awakening begins. You don't need certainty. You need presence. You need to show up to the here and now, not halfway, not while glancing backward, but fully, wholeheartedly, because this breath is the only one you're guaranteed. Not the next one, not the one after that, just this one. And what will you do with it? Will you spend it in regret, playing back scenes of what can't be undone? Or will you use it like incense, letting it rise with reverence, letting it honor all that is fleeting? Even monks who sit for decades in silence do not escape change. They bow to it. They invite it like an old friend, pouring tea for it, asking what it has come to teach this time. What if you did the same? What if you greeted every ending, not with dread, but with curiosity? What now? You might ask, what is this making space for? Because endings are not voids. They are clearings. They are the forest floor after a fire. Charred, yes, but fertile. We mourn the tree, but forget that it's falling. Let's in the sunlight for new saplings to rise. And you are a field of saplings, tiny beginnings, waiting for light. But the light only comes when you stop shading yourself with the canopy of what used to be. Let the past be the past, not because it didn't matter, but because it did, and because it shaped you, and because now it's time to be shaped by something else. There is an old tale of a monk who carried a heavy bowl up the mountain for many years, thinking it sacred. One day, the bowl slipped and shattered on a stone. At first, he wailed, his prized possession gone, but as the silence returned, he realized his hands were finally free. What are you still carrying? Because you believe you must. What are you gripping out of habit, not need? And more importantly, what might enter your life? If your hands were open, the empty space you dread is not a punishment, it's a pause, it's an invitation to breathe differently, to live with new eyes. Because when everything familiar falls away, what remains is truth. When the performance ends, what remains is presence. When you let go of who you think you're supposed to be, you finally meet who you are. And who you are is not fragile. You are not glass. You are ocean. You are not a flame easily extinguished. You are the wind that feeds it. You are not a single petal fallen. You are the entire bloom, growing again and again. Each time something ends, do not mourn your growth. Just because it doesn't look like joy. Sometimes growth looks like stillness. Sometimes it looks like grief. Sometimes it looks like shedding, cracking, unraveling. But if the seed judged itself by the pain of splitting open, it would never become a tree. So trust your split, trust the ache, trust the season that stripped your branches bare. Because spring does not come to those who hold on to dead leaves. It comes to those who have made space. And you are being prepared for something you can't yet name. You are not lost. You are being empty. You are not breaking. You are being reformed. You are not ending. You are beginning again and again and again. Because that's what life is. A cycle of beautiful unbecomings that lead to truer, softer ways of being. The moon wanes, only to wax once more. The tide pulls back, only to crash forward in glory. And your soul, too, has a rhythm. Honor it. Don't force the blooming. When it's time to rest, don't chase the sun. When your soil needs night, you are allowed to slow down. You are allowed to fall apart. You are allowed to not know what's next. Because in not knowing, you create space for wisdom. And in stillness, you hear the voice that was whispering all along, beneath the noise, beneath the striving, beneath the story. It was never about being untouchable. It was never about staying the same. It was always about being present. It was always about saying yes to this very moment, however it arrives. And this moment, this exact, ordinary, breath-warmed moment is the teacher you've been searching for. Not the books, not the gurus, not the promises wrapped in glittering words, but this, the way sunlight filters through a curtain, the hush between your thoughts, the way your chest rises, then falls, without your asking. This is presence, and presence is the path. There's a temple in Japan where the monks sweep the floor every morning, even though no dust has settled overnight. Not because the floor is dirty, but because the act of sweeping cleanses the mind. The path is not always found in epic quests. Sometimes it's hidden in the repetition, the tea you brew, the dish you wash, the walk you take, with nothing in your ears but birdsong. Because you don't awaken all at once. You awaken like dawn, softly, in layers, almost imperceptibly at first. And then one day, you look around and realize you are no longer living from urgency. You are no longer a slave to the need to prove, to hold, to earn your worth. You realize you are enough because you are, not because you achieved, not because someone stayed, not because life gave you a reason, but because life itself lives in you, in every inhale, in every smile you didn't plan, in every moment of stillness you used to avoid. Do you feel it? That quiet shift inside, that softening, not out of surrender, but out of truth. That is you remembering, not learning something new, but returning to what was always yours, like the tide returns to the shore without needing a reason, like the birds migrate without needing directions, like the breath finds its way back home again and again. There is an old Zen story about a man who asked the master, "What is the way?" And the master replied, "Everyday mind is the way. It is not found in sacred texts alone. It is not reserved for mountain tops. It is here, in how you pour your water, in how you speak to the stranger, in how you forgive yourself for not knowing until now. Even the act of listening, right now, is sacred, because in listening, you've already made space. You've already said yes to stillness, to honesty, to being human, and that is everything, because being human is not a flaw. It is a doorway to feel deeply, to lose and love again, to grow older and softer, to long for meaning in a world that keeps shifting. This is not weakness. This is your proof that something eternal lives inside something passing, that the infinite can bloom in a body that will one day return to dust. So you see, impermanence is not here to haunt you. It is here to hallow you, to carve you open, so the light can reach your core, to teach you that there is no wasted moment if it was lived with awareness. Even your mistakes, the ones you revisit in the dark, they, too, served. They, too, were part of the path, not detours but directions. And the people who left, they did not take your light with them. They only pointed you inward, toward the source that was never outside you to begin with. You are not defined by what is no longer here. You are revealed by what you do with what remains. And if what remains is only you, then let that be enough. Not as a consolation, but as a calling, because you, bare, breathing, open-hearted you, are enough. Enough to begin again. Enough to choose gentleness in a world that often forgets. Enough to be the calm in your own storm. Not by force, not by pretending, but by remembering that everything, even this, is passing. And that's why it's beautiful, because the flower doesn't bloom forever, yet we marvel when it does. Because the candle burns down, yet we gather around its light. Because the goodbye comes, and the hello is made sweeter by it. What if you lived like that? What if you loved like that? What if you didn't need forever to make something matter? The child's laugh that disappears in an instant, the glance shared across a table, the moment you finally let yourself rest. They don't last, but that's the point. They are not meant to be held. They are meant to be felt, and that is the whole of this life. Not to hold, but to feel, not to last, but to awaken. So take one more breath, with awareness this time. Feel its weightlessness. Feel how it comes unasked, how it leaves without grief. That's how life moves, without clinging, without apology, without needing a reason to be sacred. The wind through the pines doesn't explain itself. The moon doesn't beg to be loved. And you are no less divine. Let yourself be as simple as rain, as real as wood, as fleeting and radiant as fire. Let yourself be a thing that ends, and therefore a thing that shines, because nothing lasts, and that's not the tragedy, that's the miracle. So now, with your palms open, what do you carry? Not the weight of what was, not the tightness of trying to control what comes next. You carry this moment. You carry breath. You carry awareness. And that is enough. There is no enlightenment at the top of the mountain that is not already present in the way you place your foot on the first stone. There is no final arrival. There is only the practice of arriving again and again into now. Your future does not need you to chase it. It only asks that you stop abandoning the present to find something more. What more is there than this? Than being alive, knowing it won't last? What more than waking up one morning, seeing the sky as if it were painted just for you, and feeling your chest rise with nothing to prove? There is no greater freedom than realizing you don't have to become anyone else. You don't have to win. You don't have to keep up. You don't have to preserve anything forever. You only have to show up with honesty, with softness, with reverence for how quickly this will all change. And it will. The body will change. The faces you love will age. The home you build may one day be someone else's. The stories you tell yourself will shift like sand, and still it is beautiful. Because in knowing this, you begin to cherish what is here, not because you can keep it, but because you can witness it. Your morning coffee, the way your dog rests its head on your knee, the call from someone who says, "I was just thinking of you," the silence in the early hours, before the world wakes. They are here, and then they're gone, and that is what makes them holy. You are not asked to numb yourself. You are asked to feel, not endlessly indulge emotion, but to bow to it as you would bow to the moon, or a bell, or a flame. Feel what is here, and let it pass. Feel joy, and don't clutch it. Feel grief, and don't drown in it. Let every emotion be a traveler, not a tenant. Let every story be a bridge, not a prison. And when the time comes, and it always comes, to say goodbye to a chapter, a person, a dream, or even a version of yourself, say it with love. Say it with gratitude that you got to experience it at all. Say it without bitterness, because endings do not diminish meaning. They define it. The wave crashes not to destroy, but to return to stillness. The fire fades, not in failure, but in fulfillment of its purpose. And you are here to burn brightly and gently go. You do not need to be remembered forever. You only need to be fully here, while you are. When a monk was once asked how he would describe enlightenment, he said, "When I eat, I eat. When I sleep. No more pretending, no more performance. Just this, just life as it is. Enough. Because it won't last. Enough. Because it's happening now. Enough. Because you are no longer asleep inside it. So let yourself live, not in defense, not in delay, not in some distant someday, when everything is perfect. Let yourself live now, imperfect, impermanent, and radiant. Let your tears come like rain on dry soil. Let your laughter rise like spring after a long winter. Let your breath be your anchor, and your heart be your compass. And when the moment arrives, as it always does, to say goodbye again, to this day, to this season, to someone you love, or even this life, let it be a soft goodbye. Let it be a bow. Let it be a whisper that says, "I was here, and it was beautiful." Because nothing lasts, and that's why it is worth everything. There are seasons in the heart that arrive without sound. No thunder, no downpour, just a quiet dimming, as if the sun forgets to rise in full. And you sit there, not quite in darkness, not quite in light, just in between. Grief is this quiet season. It does not announce itself. It does not ask for permission. It arrives like the fog, gentle but all-consuming. And before you know it, you're wrapped in its arms, not knowing how you got there, not knowing how to leave. And perhaps, for now, you are not meant to, because grief is not a storm to escape, but a tide to breathe with. In the quiet spaces between the tears, in the long sighs that rise from your chest, like old winds escaping a cracked window, there is something sacred, not broken, not ruined, but sacred. To grieve is not a failure of strength. It is proof that you have loved, and love, when true, leaves traces, not just memories, but imprints on your breath, like footsteps in wet sand. You may try to walk away, but your body remembers the way their voice lingered in a room, the way their silence filled the air even louder, the way time moved differently when they were near. And now, how time refuses to move at all. But the path is not in resisting this stillness. The path is in allowing it, sitting with it, not as an enemy, but as an old teacher who speaks in riddles and pauses. In Zen, they say the falling flower does not resist the wind. It dances with it, even as it drops. Grieving gently is not about rushing to feel better. It is about giving yourself permission to feel without shame, without urgency, without a finish line to chase, like a leaf floating down a stream. You do not force the journey. You surrender to it, trusting that the river knows its course, even when you do not. Some days, you may feel weightless. Others, you will feel like stone. Both are part of the process. You are not meant to be okay all the time. You are meant to be real. Let the sadness sit beside you like an old friend. Do not rush it away with noise or distraction. Give it tea. Give it time. Give it space to speak. What does your sorrow need to say? What parts of you are asking to be held? Not healed yet, just held. There is no right way to mourn. No perfect path through loss. Only presence and breath. One breath at a time. Inhale, I am here. Exhale. That is enough. The world may tell you to move on, to be strong, to smile for others. But the quiet wisdom of the Spirit says otherwise. It says be still. It says be soft. It says let the ache wash over you like the evening tide. Gentle, inevitable, cleansing. You are not drowning. You are being reshaped like mountains carved by centuries of rain. You, too, are being made into something sacred by the waters of your sorrow. Let yourself be changed. Let yourself shed the illusions you once clung to. Even in pain, there is clarity, the kind that whispers, not shouts, the kind that reveals what truly matters. Not the plans, not the noise, not the endless proving, but the touch of a hand, the sound of laughter, the presence of a soul that once sat across from you in the dim light of morning, asking nothing of you but your being. That mattered. It still does. Grief is the echo of that presence, and though the form may be gone, the essence remains. In a dream, in a scent, in the way your hand still reaches out before your mind remembers. This is not weakness. This is remembrance, and remembrance is a form of love. So let yourself love them still, not by holding on to the pain, but by allowing the love to evolve. Let it breathe in new forms, in acts of kindness, in moments of silence, in the way you now see the world. A little softer, a little slower, a little more awake. You are not letting go of them. You are letting go of the need for them to be how they were. And that is compassion. Compassion is not a grand gesture. It is the choice, again and again, to meet this moment with tenderness. Even when you are tired, even when your heart feels too full to hold anything else. Especially then, let your grief be a doorway, not into despair, but into deeper presence. Do not ask how long this will last. Ask, instead, what is it asking of me? Maybe it wants you to pause, to listen, to remember the sacredness of every passing day. Maybe it wants you to soften the way you speak to yourself, to release the pressure to be over it. Maybe it simply wants you to sit beside it and say, I'm still here. And that is enough. The plum tree does not bloom all year. There are seasons when it stands bare, branches stretched like bone, silent and waiting. But within, the life still stirs, and one morning, without announcement, it blossoms again. Your blooming will return, not because you force it, but because you allow winter to do its work. So grieve gently. Let the petals fall. Let the branches sigh. Let the wind move through you without resistance. You are not breaking. You are unfolding. Unfolding does not always feel beautiful. Sometimes it feels like unraveling, like losing the threads you thought held you together. But those threads were never your essence. They were only the garments of a moment now past. And when the old robe falls away, it is not death. It is revelation. In Zen monasteries, there is a ritual of sweeping the floor, not to clean, but to practice presence. Each stroke of the broom is a prayer, a reminder that letting go is not a loss. It is an offering. So too, when you sweep the corners of your soul, gathering the dust of memories, you are not discarding love. You are honoring it, making space for it to breathe again. In new form, there is a teaching. When the cup is full, stop pouring. When the heart is full of yesterday, stop chasing tomorrow. Sit still. Let the fullness settle. Only then will you know what truly remains. And what remains is never loud. It is quiet, as moonlight on water, soft as the moment before a tear falls. This is where the truth lives in the space after the noise, in the silence that follows the storm. You do not need to rebuild everything. You do not need to fix the ache. You only need to sit in it. With kindness, let the stillness hold you like the lap of a grandmother. No answers, just presence. Breathe. Inhale, I am whole. Even now, exhale. I trust what is becoming. The bamboo does not curse the wind when it bends. It leans, and in its leaning, it survives. You, too, are made to bend, not break, to feel deeply, not to flee, to embrace, not escape, but gently, always gently, let yourself whisper to the ache instead of shouting it down. Let your hands tremble with tenderness instead of gripping control. Let your eyes see clearly what was and what still is within, because grief is not about what's gone. It is about what continues in a different shape. The love that no longer needs form to exist. A song remembered, a lesson lived, a warmth that visits you when you least expect it and leaves you breathless, not from pain, but from grace. This is the miracle of loss. It softens us, not because we have become weak, but because we have become aware, aware of impermanence, aware of beauty, aware of the fleeting, sacred texture of every breath. What if grief is not a wound, but a doorway? What if this moment of tenderness is not something to escape, but something to enter fully? Walk through. Do not carry your sorrow like a stone. Carry it like a candle. Let it light the way forward. You may not know where the path leads, but the flame you hold is enough for this step, and the next, and the next. Even in your most silent hours, you are not alone. The great pine tree does not ask the stars to speak, yet it is companioned by the sky. So, too, your sorrow is not alone. It is seen by the unseen, held by the same force that cradles the tides, guides the moon, moves the seasons without fail. The cosmos is not afraid of your grief. It has room for it. So do you. Let your sorrow be part of the sky inside you, a constellation of memory and love. One day, you will speak of this pain, not with tightness in your chest, but with softness in your voice. You will say, I remember, and in remembering, I honor. You will laugh again, not because you forget, but because you have remembered in a new way. The tears you shed today water the garden of tomorrow. They do not fall in vain. There are seeds within you now of compassion, of gentleness, of wisdom, planted by the storm, and when the season turns, you will bloom in ways you cannot yet imagine, not despite the grief, but because of it. So if today you can only sit, if today you can only breathe, if today you can only whisper, I'm still here, then that is enough. Enough for healing to begin, enough for love to keep flowing, enough for the light to find you again. You are not lost, you are becoming, and becoming takes time, gentle time, like morning mist, lifting from the mountain, revealing the path beneath your feet, only when you're ready to walk it. So rest, dear soul, rest in the knowing that you do not need to rush, rest in the softness of not knowing, rest in the arms of this moment, and let it cradle you without condition. For even as the old falls away, the new is arriving, not with noise, but with stillness, not with demand, but with breath, not with answers, but with space, the space to feel, to remember, to release, to grieve. Gently, there is a quiet wisdom in the way the body knows how to heal itself. The skin mends without being told, a bruise fades without a deadline, and the breath continues, even when we forget to notice. The heart, too, has its own pace, its own language. It does not speak in logic or instruction. It speaks in sensation, in the sudden welling of tears, in the ache beneath laughter, in the moments of stillness that come uninvited and yet feel strangely holy. To grieve with compassion is to listen to this language without trying to translate it into anything neat or tidy. It is to allow the waves to rise and fall without holding back the tide or blaming the shore. Some days you may rise early, energized by the sun, ready to step forward with grace. Other days You may feel like a tree in winter, bare, unmoving, your branches too tired to reach, and both days are sacred. There is no scale here, no measurement of progress, only presence. Grief is not a ladder to climb, but a circle to walk. You return to the same places, not because you are failing, but because each return reveals something new. You cry again, but differently. You remember again, but softer now. You long again, but without losing yourself in the longing. This is growth, subtle, invisible, true, and in this slow unfolding, you will begin to notice the tiny mercies, a breeze on your skin that feels like a hand, a laugh that escapes without permission, a flower blooming in a crack of concrete, proof that beauty insists on surviving. Let those small mercies touch you. Let them in. Do not push them away in loyalty to your pain. Your love does not demand your suffering. It only asks for your honesty. And honestly, you are allowed to feel joy. Even now, even while grieving, joy is not betrayal. Joy is not forgetting. Joy is what the soul returns to when it remembers its true shape. And your true shape is spacious. It can hold both the ache and the all, both the absence and the abundance, both the loss and the love. There is no rule book for this, no script you must follow, but there is a rhythm, a breath, and if you stay with it, you will begin to hear your own voice again, not the voice that pleases others, not the voice that performs strength, but the voice that rises from silence, rooted in truth, the voice that says, yes, this hurts, and yes, I can hold it, like the earth holds fallen leaves, like the sky holds passing clouds, like the ocean holds every wave. Without resistance, you are not falling apart. You are learning how to carry yourself with more tenderness, and that, too, is healing. The lotus does not bloom without the mud. The night does not end without the patience of dawn. And you will not stay in this moment forever. But while you are here, make it sacred. Wrap your sorrow in a shawl of stillness. Give it warmth. Give it name. Give it the dignity it deserves. For what you grieve once held your heart, and your heart is holy. Do not rush it. Do not force it to be tidy or convenient. Let it be what it is. Let it breathe. And while it breathes, breathe with it. Inhale, I honor what was. Exhale, I welcome what will be. Even if you don't yet know what that is. Even if all you can do is sit beside the unknown and whisper, I trust. This is not passive. This is not weakness. This is the courage of softening. When the world tells you to harden, the strength of being still. When the world tells you to hurry, the bravery of being tender. In a world that rewards armor, let them keep their noise. You are learning the music of quiet. You are walking the path of gentle strength. And as you do, you will find others along the way. Those who grieve, those who carry their hearts in open palms, those who know that love is not measured by duration, but by depth. You will know them not by their words, but by their eyes, soft, steady, familiar, and you will understand, without needing to speak, that grief is the thread that binds us, not the wall that separates. We are all walking each other home, even if we don't know the way, so keep walking, at your pace, with your breath, with your compassion intact. Grief will not last forever, but it will leave gifts behind. Quiet ones, a slower gaze, a deeper empathy, a steadier soul. You may not notice them at first, but one day, in the middle of an ordinary moment, you'll realize you have changed, not in spite of what you lost, but because of how deeply you loved and how gently you chose to let go. There is a kind of peace that doesn't shout. It doesn't arrive with fanfare or trumpet, some grand realization. It just settles, like dew on grass in early morning, quiet, unnoticed, but present. This is the peace that follows grieving gently, not because the pain has vanished, but because you are no longer at war with it. You've stopped asking it to go away. You've stopped measuring it against the expectations of others, and in that surrender, you've found something better than answers. You've found stillness. Stillness is not silence. It is not numbness. Stillness is aliveness. Without panic, awareness without clinging, gratitude without needing. And when you sit in that stillness, you begin to see everything differently. You see how even the hardest days brought gifts in the form of insight, humility, connection. You see how your tears soften the soil of your soul, making room for a new kind of blooming. And no, this blooming is not loud, not showy, not for display. It is the quiet kind, like moss growing between stones, like light slipping beneath a closed door. But it is real, and it is yours. You've made space inside yourself for sorrow and grace to coexist. You've stopped trying to exile your grief and invited it to rest in the temple of your heart, not as a guest to be evicted, but as a teacher to be honored. And the lessons it leaves behind are not the ones you expected. You thought grief would harden you, but it softened you. You thought it would close you, but it opened you. You thought it would destroy you, but it transformed you. Now, you carry a gentler strength, a wisdom not earned through books or teachings, but through your own sacred unraveling. You've seen how the world continues, even when you pause, how beauty does not demand your perfection to be present, and how love, true love, does not die with form. It transforms. The one you lost is not lost. They are woven into you, not in a way that binds, but in a way that frees. They are in the way you listen now, more fully. They are in the way you hold space for others, with fewer words and more presence. They are in the way you honor time, no longer rushing through moments you used to ignore. Grief has not removed them from your life. It has placed them everywhere, in breath, in wind, in silence. And as you continue forward, step by slow step, you carry not the burden of their absence, but the gift of their presence. Reimagined, you become their continuation, not in replication, but in essence. The way you smile, the way you forgive, the way you begin again, and you will begin again. You already have. Each morning, you chose to rise without answers. You began again. Each time you wept and still made space for sunlight, you began again. Each time you said, "This hurts, and I will not run from it," you began again. There is no final chapter, only breath, only now, only the unfolding of this moment, alive with possibility, gentled by grace. So take one last breath here, in this sacred space, not to finish, but to return to yourself, to return to your life, to return with new eyes, softer hands, a wider heart. You do not have to forget to move forward. You do not have to erase, to evolve. Let your grief become your compassion. Let your story become your offering. Let your healing become your prayer. And walk on, not because you are over it, but because you have become one with it, like water, accepting the shape of a new stream, like the moon surrendering to morning, with gentleness, with presence, with love that does not end. Grieve gently, let go, with compassion, and live with an open heart. When things fall apart, something awakens. Have you ever watched a leaf fall not rushed by wind, not torn by storm, but simply released? It does not resist the letting go. It does not cling to the branch that once gave it life. It drifts, not knowing where it will land, but trusting the air to carry it. That is how some endings arrive, quietly, without thunder, without warning. And yet, there is something sacred in the fall. We try so hard to hold everything together. Identities, routines, relationships, dreams that once fit us, but now chafe like tight shoes. But life is not in the holding. Life is in the movement, in the shift, in the silent collapse of what no longer serves. When things fall apart, it is not a punishment. It is an invitation to listen, to feel, to awaken. Have you noticed? The mind seeks certainty, like a child reaching for a parent's hand in the dark. But existence, in its purest form, offers no guarantees. The seasons do not ask permission to change. The tide does not apologize for receding, and so we suffer not because of impermanence, but because we expect permanence in a world made of breath. The teachings say suffering is the resistance to what is, and resistance often looks noble, like effort, like ambition, like perseverance. But there is a quiet violence in clinging. We grip things, people, identities, even pain, because we fear the emptiness beneath. But emptiness is not absence, it is space. The kind of space where clarity can return, where breath is no longer labored, where you can finally hear the sound of your own soul whispering, "Now you are free." In the moments when your plans crumble, when what you built with both hands no longer stands, pause, not to fix, not to rebuild, but to see what remains when the roles dissolve, to see who you are when there is nothing left to perform. The brokenness, the endings, the unraveling, they are not mistakes. They are mirrors. They show you where you were building on sand, where your strength was borrowed, where your smile was stitched, not grown. Have you ever held something broken and realized it was lighter? There is a relief that comes with surrender, a kind of peace you cannot force when you no longer chase, no longer grasp. Something stills, and in that stillness, something ancient stirs, like the moon returning behind parting clouds, like the scent of earth after rain, like truth, unspoken but known. You begin to remember you are not the titles, not the plans, not the illusions of control. You are the witness, the breath, the space in between. When you lose what you thought you couldn't live without, something else wakes up inside you, a self that is softer but wiser, more quiet but more whole, a self that does not fear the falling because it has learned to land. You see, collapse is not the end, it is a return to what is essential, a return to the rhythm of life before it was buried beneath shoulds and schedules, before you forgot how to be still. Even the bamboo bends in the storm. That is how it survives. The rigidity of the mind says, "I must hold on," but the wisdom of the heart whispers, "Let go, and you will remain." There is a Zen parable about a monk whose cup slipped from his hands and shattered. The others gasped, but the monk simply bowed and said, so it is, not out of carelessness, not out of coldness, but out of reverence for the truth. Everything that rises must fall, and everything that falls frees something. So what, then, is awakening? It is not some dramatic enlightenment on a mountaintop. It is the ordinary miracle of meeting your sorrow with compassion, of holding your confusion like a child tenderly, without needing it to make sense. It is breathing into the unknown and saying, "I trust this," too, even when you don't yet understand, even when your hands are still trembling from the letting go. Awakening is not the escape from pain, it is the embracing of it without armor, not to drown in it, but to allow it to wash away what is false, what is rigid. When things fall apart, the noise quiets, the distractions dim, and in that space, a voice emerges, not loud, but clear, not demanding, but certain. It says, "Begin again, but begin from here, not from who you were, not from who they told you to be, but from who you are now." The seed does not mourn the shell it splits. The fire does not apologize for the ash it leaves. Why, then, must you regret your own becoming? What if falling apart is how the truth finds its way in? What if the version of you that breaks is not the one meant to last, but the one meant to make space? Space for softness, space for silence, space for something real. There is a still lake within you. You've covered it with ripples, stirred by the winds of doubt and comparison and fear. But when the storm passes, the water clears, and in that reflection, you remember you were never the chaos. You were the calm beneath. So breathe. Breathe into the ache. Breathe into the space. Breathe into the beautiful unknown. This is not the end. It is the turning of a page. And while you may not know the story ahead, you do know this. The hands that hold this pen are steady now. not because they control the ink, but because they have surrendered to the writing. There is a quiet revolution that happens in the heart after loss, not the kind with banners and crowds, but the kind that whispers through the bones. You are still here, and that means something. We are taught to fear endings as though they are proof that we failed. But what if an ending is just truth, taking off its mask? What if the unraveling is not the death of your story, but the birth of a more honest one? There is nothing more tender than the moment you stop pretending, the moment you allow the ache to speak, not to judge it, not to fix it, but simply to witness it, like the moon watches the sea softly, without need. It's in this sacred pause, this breath between the collapse and the rebuild, that the soul exhales. You stop running, you stop reaching, and in that holy stillness, you remember the wisdom you buried under all the striving, that you do not have to earn your worth, that your value is not in what remains standing, but in what rises from the quiet. There is an old saying, when the heart breaks open, the world enters. That is the gift hidden inside every ending space. Space for newness, space for truth, space for the parts of you that were too shy to speak while everything was going well. Have you noticed how some flowers only bloom after fire? How some seeds need darkness before they can grow? The pain you feel now, it is not punishment, it is preparation. The mind will argue, it will demand meaning, reasons, reassurances, but the soul does not deal in explanation. It deals in presence, and presence needs no justification. It only asks that you show up to the ache, to the breath, to the trembling hand that still dares to reach forward. The moment you allow what is, without fighting or fixing, you become the witness, and the witness is free. Free from the script, free from the performance, free to simply be. What if this breaking, this silence, this surrender is the door that leads you back to yourself? You do not need to rush to rebuild. You do not need to have answers today. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is sit with the pieces and not panic, to honor the fall, to trust the intelligence of the dismantling, because something deeper than logic is at work, a wisdom that has carried trees through winters, rivers through stone, stars through endless night, and it's working in you too. You don't have to be okay right now. You only have to be real, to feel what is here without rushing to escape it. This moment, just as it is sacred ground, not because it's easy, but because it's true, and truth is the only place transformation can begin. Let go of the timeline. Let go of the pressure to bounce back. You are not a rubber band. You are a being, and beings bloom in seasons, not on schedules. Maybe you lost something, or someone. Maybe the life you were building doesn't fit anymore. That is not failure. That is the shedding of what was never yours to hold forever. You are not here to carry what breaks you. You are here to break open what carries you. There is a kind of strength born in these moments, a soft strength, one that does not dominate, but endures, that does not shout, but speaks clearly like water carving stone. It whispers, I am still here. I am not finished. I am not the ruin. I am what grows through it. Have you ever seen moss growing in the cracks of old walls? Life insists, even when all structures fall, life returns, quietly, softly, without asking for permission. And so will you. You will not rise the same. You will not rise with the same illusions or the same needs, but you will rise with more truth, more gentleness, more spaciousness in your soul. Because once you've sat in the ashes and found peace there is nothing left to fear. The worst has happened, and you are still breathing, still here. And if you're still here, then life is not finished with you, not by a long shot. So now, take this breath, not as a task, but as a gift. Inhale the moment as it is. No fixing, no striving, just being. This is your new beginning, but not a beginning shaped by goals or strategies, a beginning shaped by softness, by presence, by the choice to walk forward, not because you must, but because something inside you wants to. That quiet, wanting it, is sacred. It is the compass that never breaks, even when the map burns. So follow that whisper, even if it's faint, even if it trembles, because when things fall apart, something awakens, not a shout, not a command, just the gentle voice that says, "You are not the end. You are the space in which all things begin again." You don't need a plan right now. You need presence, the kind that listens without judgment, the kind that watches the sky shift without begging it to stay blue. You have spent so much of your life trying to be enough, trying to do enough, know enough, heal enough, prove enough, but in this moment, stripped of expectations, surrounded by silence, you begin to understand you were never meant to become anything. You were only meant to return. Return to what? To what you already are, to what you've always been, to that unshaken self beneath the waves of identity and approval, the one who watches the storm without becoming it, the one who feels deeply but is not broken by the feeling. And as you rest in that awareness, you may realize this is the first time you've truly rested in years. Not just the body, but the self behind the doing. So few ever pause long enough to meet that self. We are too busy becoming, too busy performing. But when everything falls and the roles are gone, that deeper presence begins to rise. No mask, no agenda, just breath. And the miracle of being aware, this is awakening, not a light from above, but a flame from within, not a final destination, but a tender noticing. The moment you see your pain without resistance, the moment you feel your breath without manipulating it, the moment you sit with yourself and realize you are not waiting to be rescued anymore. There is no savior coming. There is no magic solution. But there is you, more whole than you thought, more aware than you believed, more peaceful than you feared. You do not have to fight so hard anymore. You do not have to earn your peace. It is not a reward. It is your nature, but it was buried beneath the noise, beneath the striving, beneath the story that told you to keep moving, to keep fixing, to keep chasing. Let it fall. Let the story fall, like the leaves in autumn, and let your bare branches breathe. There is nothing wrong with being empty. In emptiness, there is room to feel, room to rest, room to begin again. Have you ever watched a field after the harvest? So still, so bare, and yet beneath that silence, life is preparing, the soil is resting, the roots are deepening. What looks like nothing is the beginning of everything. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not lost. You are becoming soft enough to hold your truth. You are becoming still enough to hear your life speak. And it is speaking even now, in the quiet moments, in the breath you almost forgot to notice, in the way your chest rises without effort. You are life itself. And life is not in a rush. It unfolds, petal by petal, tide by tide, step by step. No part of you is unworthy. No part of your journey is wasted. Even the broken chapters were sacred. Even the tears carved space for light. Even the nights you thought you wouldn't make it, especially those were doorways. You do not need to erase your pain to find peace. You only need to sit beside it without fear, to let it speak and say, "I hear you." Then, gently release it like incense rising into the air. No need to hold on. The lesson has been learned. And now, you are free to step forward, not as who you were, but as who you are awake, aware, enough. When things fall apart, it is the universe's way of shaking you awake, not to punish you, but to remind you, this life is too precious to sleep through. You were made for more than the roles you play. You were made for truth, for presence, for beauty that cannot be seen with the eyes, but only felt through the stillness in your chest. The moment you realize this, the world changes, not because it rearranged itself, but because you did. You stopped needing to control. You stopped needing to fix. You started to trust, like the mountain trusts the sky to bring its snow, like the seed trusts the dark to crack it open, like the child trusts the arms that hold it. You belong here, now, without needing to do anything else. And from that belonging, you begin to rise, not hurried, not panicked, but natural, like the breath, one step, then another, not to prove, but to live. So now, the question is no longer, how do I fix this? But rather, what is this teaching me? There is wisdom in the ashes. If you're quiet enough, if you stop trying to sweep it all away too quickly, you will feel it. Not in grand epiphanies, not in dramatic signs, but in the tiniest of shifts. The ease of your shoulders, the calm in your eyes, the breath that returns, like a forgotten friend. Peace does not arrive as a parade. It slips in like the scent of jasmine at night, unnoticed at first, until you realize the entire air has changed. And so have you, not because you forced a breakthrough, not because you found the right path, but because you surrendered to what was real. That is the doorway presence. That is the miracle awakening, not becoming someone else, but remembering who you are when there is nothing left to hold. There is an old Zen phrase, let go or be dragged. And you have let go, not once, but again and again, of stories, of shoulds, of the belief that your worth depends on what stays unbroken. You have watched things fall, you have sat in the rubble, and you have chosen presence over panic, stillness over noise, being over proving, and now you rise, but not in the way the world told you to, not polished, not loud, not for applause. You rise in the way rivers rise after a drought, quietly, naturally, as though you were always meant to, and you were, because this moment, this breath, this body, this life is not about being untouched by pain. It is about learning how to feel it fully and still say, this, too, is part of me, and I do not need to hide it. You are no longer ashamed of your cracks. You see now the light enters through them, and something sacred grows in those soft places. Compassion, clarity, depth, all the things you longed for are not found in the peak of perfection, but in the valley of surrender. So stand there, in your stillness. Let the sun warm your skin. Let the wind brush your face. Let the breath move in and out. Without effort, this is not a recovery. This is a rebirth, and it does not need to be rushed. You have nothing to prove. You are not late to your life. You are exactly where awakening begins, in the rawness of now, in the simplicity of presence, in the silent vow you've made to yourself. I will not abandon who I am to please a world that never learned to sit still. There is courage in your stillness. There is fire in your softness. And there is love, a deep, unconditional, enduring love that exists beneath every layer of fear, of doubt, of grief. That love is you. So walk on, with open palms, with a heart that knows its way, with the quiet strength of someone who has known the dark and still chooses light, not the blinding light of escape, but the gentle light of truth, of being, of breath. You are the tree that bends in the wind, the sky that holds the storm without becoming it, the wave that rises, then falls, then rises again. This is your nature. This is your beauty. This is your awakening. And it began the moment everything fell, because sometimes it is only when things fall apart that we remember what can never be broken. There is a moment right before the wave breaks, when the ocean seems to hold its breath, not silence, but something deeper, a pause, a trembling, a sacred stillness before surrender. This is where life begins again, not in the noise of arrival, but in the quiet of release. We spend so much of our time clutching to roles, to names, to stories that no longer fit, to people who no longer walk beside us, and versions of ourselves we've already outgrown. But beginnings, true beginnings, are never loud. They arrive wrapped in endings, in the hush after goodbye, in the echo of a door closing softly behind you, in the final exhale After a long-held breath, the cherry blossom does not grieve its falling. The tree lets it go, not because it meant nothing, but because it meant everything. And now, something else must bloom. We are not trained to honor this kind of loss. We are told to move on quickly, smile, distract, be strong, as if strength were the absence of sorrow, instead of the willingness to sit with it. But the ancients knew better. In Zen, they say the falling leaf is the Sutra of Impermanence, a sacred text written not in ink, but in the language of letting go. What if the pain you carry is not a punishment, but a portal, not a wound, but a window? You are not broken because something ended. You are being reshaped by it. Let yourself feel the edges, the sharpness, the silence, the space. They are chiseling away what no longer serves you. They are revealing who you were before the world told you who to be. When the Buddha sat beneath the Bodhi tree, he did not seek to escape suffering. He turned toward it, watched it, understood it, until it unraveled. This is your Bodhi moment, not beneath a tree, perhaps, but beneath the weight of change, in the aftermath of loss, in the slow, tender reconstruction of a self that no longer fits the old story. You are not lost. You are being rewritten in quieter ink, and no one teaches us how to mourn the selves we no longer are. There is grief in growing, in no longer reacting the same way, in no longer chasing what once lit our eyes. There is sorrow in shedding, even if what we shed is no longer ours. The snake does not mourn its skin. The moon does not weep for the shape it leaves behind. Still, the shift is sacred. You are allowed to feel the ache of becoming. You are allowed to be the bridge between who you were and who you are yet to be. Even the river must carve the rock again and again before the valley opens. Even the lotus must push through mud before it greets the sun. Even the morning must pass through darkness before light touches the leaves. There is no shame in not being ready, only patience, only breath. So breathe. Breathe not to escape this moment, but to meet it. Let the inhale be a homecoming. Let the exhale be a surrender. This is how you begin. Again, not by force, not by rush, but by returning to stillness, to breath, to the silent wisdom that your soul still remembers. You are not late. You are not behind. You are exactly where the next chapter begins. And it might not look like a beginning. It might feel like stillness, like numbness, like standing at the edge of something too wide to name. That's okay. Beginnings often wear the mask of emptiness, but the seed knows it is growing even in the dark. You do not have to bloom today. You only have to trust that something is stirring. The sun does not rush its rise. The bamboo takes years to root before it shoots through the soil overnight. The seasons do not compete with one another for beauty. You, too, unfold in time, not in the time of clocks or calendars, but in the time of your soul's deep rhythm, the part of you that is older than your name, older than this pain, older than every goodbye you've ever whispered. There is a shore beyond this ocean of grief, and you are sailing there even now, even if the winds are soft and the stars are hidden, even if all you can do today is float. Let that be enough. There is strength in not knowing, too, in releasing the need for closure, in trusting that not every answer must arrive before peace begins. Some goodbyes are final, others are invitations. Some endings burn bridges, others build thresholds, and only the heart can know which is which. So let the heart speak, not in words, but in weather. Let it rain if it must. Let it thunder if it needs to. Let it soften like dusk on the side of a mountain, if that's all you have. You don't have to pretend. There is no enlightenment in bypassing your truth. The Zen master does not walk above the world, untouched. He walks within it, barefoot, aware, gentle, fully human, fully awake. And so can you. To awaken is not to escape your pain. but to meet it with open hands, to bow to it as a teacher, to listen as it whispers what you were too busy to hear before. Goodbye is not the enemy. Denial is, avoidance is, the refusal to feel is, but goodbye. Goodbye is honest. Goodbye clears the soil. Goodbye makes room. It is the pruning of the soul, and from this pruning, you begin, not all over, but anew. Not as a different person, but as a truer one. Let yourself be seen, not for the performance you gave yesterday, but for the presence you offer now, even if it trembles, even if it cracks, even if all you can carry is the truth that this is hard. That, too, is holy. The rain does not apologize for soaking the earth, and you do not need to apologize for needing time, needing space, needing healing. The silence after goodbye is not empty. It is full of what will come next. If you dare not to fill it too fast, let the silence speak. It knows your name. It knows the way back to who you are beneath the rolls, beneath the noise, beneath even the grief. You are not just beginning again. You are remembering that who you are was never truly lost, only waiting. And now, finally, you are listening. The moment you stop running, the moment you stop forcing, that is the moment the truth finds you, not with fire, not with fury, but with a whisper, the whisper that says, you are still here, and here is enough. Let the tears fall, if they need to. They are not weakness, they are water, softening the ground, so something new can take root. Let the silence stretch. It is not emptiness, it is spaciousness, the room where your spirit can finally breathe without being asked to perform. You do not need to know the entire path ahead. You only need to know where your next step is. And sometimes that step is simply standing still, staying with your breath, staying with your body, staying with this moment, no matter how unrecognizable it feels, because the unfamiliar is often the birthplace of the truest version of you. You are not who you were before the goodbye. You are softer now, more open, more able to see the sacred in the small, the way steam curls from a morning cup of tea, the hush of early light touching your window, the sound of your own heartbeat reminding you that you're still alive and still capable of loving again. The world doesn't teach us to stay. It teaches us to escape, to numb, to chase the next thing, the next role, the next someone to fill the ache. But what if the ache isn't meant to be filled? What if it's meant to be felt until it teaches you how to live without clinging? What if presence is the only cure? There is a Zen koan that asks, what was your original face before your parents were born? That question does not seek a literal answer. It is a gate leading you inward. Who were you before you were named? Before you were told who to be? Before the expectations? Before the disappointments? Before the grief? You were pure awareness, a clear sky, a still pond, a field not yet walked upon, and beneath it all, you still are. The roles will change, the people will leave, the forms will dissolve, but the presence beneath it all remains steady, unmoved, untouched by gain or loss. This is the part of you that watches the seasons of your life without panic. The part of you that knows that spring will follow even the coldest winter, because it always has, because it always will. This is not a message of false hope. This is not an invitation to think positive or be grateful before your heart is ready. This is a reminder that life does not require you to be anything other than here, fully, honestly, tenderly, whatever you feel, let it be enough. Whatever you've lost, honor it. Whatever you cannot fix, bow to it. Sometimes the most sacred act is not to heal, but to stop trying to be unbroken, to stand in the ruins of what was and say, even this is holy. The temple isn't always made of stone. Sometimes it's the quiet corner of your room. Sometimes it's the walk you take alone after goodbye. Sometimes it's your own breath slow, steady, silent, carrying you back to center. To live in the wake of loss is not to fail. It is to have loved. It is to have risked. It is to be human in all your rawness and reverence. Let the light touch you through the cracks. Let it remind you nothing is wasted. Not the time you gave, not the love you shared, not the endings you didn't choose. It all shaped you. It all softened you. And that softness, that deep, unguarded tenderness, that is the gift. You are not weak because you feel you are alive. And that is no small thing. The tea tastes different now, doesn't it? The morning light falls on the floor, a little more golden. The street you always walk feels unfamiliar, as if the world has shifted just slightly. It has, because you have, because grief has peeled back a layer, and now you see more, you hear more. You hold things differently, not with fists, but with fingers open, like a prayer. This is how goodbye becomes a teacher, not in a classroom, but in the quiet, not through answers, but through attention. You begin to notice things again. The sound of wind in the trees, the way strangers laugh on park benches, the silence between two breaths that is not empty, but eternal. You begin to realize the world never left you. You had only forgotten how to listen. And now, because you have lost, you hear the hush beneath the noise, the stillness beneath the ache, the life that never stopped flowing. Even when you felt left behind, you were not abandoned. You were being invited inward to find the place in yourself that cannot be taken, to rediscover the you that existed before the story, before the success, before the sorrow, to stand at the edge of the unknown and not run, but breathe. That breath, right there, that is the beginning. The one you didn't realize you were waiting for. The one that doesn't need a title or a plan or a guarantee. Just trust, just stillness, just the willingness to feel fully and finally. So say goodbye if you must. Let it be real. Let it be soft. Let it be sacred. But listen carefully, because if you do, in the very next breath, you'll hear it. The whisper, the beginning, the one that's been waiting just on the other side. You cannot rush the soil. You cannot shout at a seed and expect to blossom. Some beginnings are quiet because they are still underground, softening, stirring, making space for unseen roots. This is not stagnation. This is preparation. This is not failure. This is foundation. You may not yet see what's forming within you, but that doesn't mean it isn't real. The most profound transformations often happen in the dark, like the chrysalis, sealed and still, dissolving everything it once was, not knowing what wings feel like. Only that change is necessary. You are in your cocoon season, and there is no shame in that. There is honor in the pause, in the breath between chapters, in the moment you stop clinging to what was and begin, not with grand declarations, but with the decision to stay soft in a world that asks you to harden, to not rush to fill the space left behind by goodbye, to not pretend your heart is ready when it is simply breathing. There's a lesson the bamboo teaches. For years, it seems like nothing grows, but all the while, its roots are expanding wide, deep, patient, and when the time comes, it shoots up so quickly, so confidently, it surprises even the ones who planted it. Maybe your roots are growing now. Maybe what looks like stillness is quiet resilience. Maybe what feels like loss is the loosening of what you no longer need. Sometimes we are stripped down so that we may return to the truth of who we are, not more, not better, just true. And the truth is, you were never meant to carry everything. Let some of it fall. Let some of it be set down without apology. You are not less whole because you let go. You are more honest, more light. The robe of your old identity might feel too tight now, too stitched with the expectations of others, too worn from the roles you thought you had to keep playing. But you are not a costume. You are a living being allowed to change, allowed to rest, allowed to be unsure. Let the robe fall. Let yourself be robeless without titles, without labels, without the need to explain your becoming. Sometimes the soul needs to be naked to remember its own shape. There is no shame in the simplicity of beginning. There is grace in the humility of saying, I don't know who I am right now, but I'm listening. And that listening, that inward, gentle awareness, is the beginning of wisdom. It is the first step toward peace not built on performance, but presence, the type of peace that doesn't depend on the noise stopping, but on your choice to stop needing the noise. This is not an escape from life. This is a re-entry, a slow, mindful walk back into the very center of it, without pretending, without performing, without needing to be anything other than awake. The monk does not renounce the world because he hates it. He renounces what is false so that he can fully love what is real. You don't have to leave your life to live differently. You only have to return to breath, to awareness, to the simplicity of this moment. The wind still moves the grass. The birds still sing before sunrise. The tea still warms the hands that hold it. Life has not left you behind. It has been waiting, not for your perfection, but for your permission to be felt again. So feel, let it all in. The ache and the awe, the confusion and the clarity, the sorrow and the spark of something unnamed rising in your chest. This is the inhale before the next exhale, the tide pulling back before it returns, the goodbye. That isn't the end, only the echo before something holy. You are not rebuilding, you are remembering, and what you remember will not be loud. It will not arrive with fanfare or force. It will come gently, like a hand on your shoulder, a voice in the wind, a knowing in the bones that says, you have always been enough. Even when it ended, even when they left, even when it broke, you remained. And now you are free to begin again, not with pressure, not with answers, but with presence. And presence is the most radical beginning of all. You do not need to light the whole path, only the next small candle, only the next breath, only the next truth you can hold without trembling. Healing is not about becoming who you once were. It is about meeting who you are now without turning away. And that, too, is a kind of beginning, the kind no one applauds, because it happens in silence. But silence is sacred. In the silence, you meet yourself, not the self you show to the world, not the self you built to survive, but the self who watches, who waits, who knows, the self who speaks not in words, but in the rhythm of heartbeats, the self who doesn't rush you, who doesn't ask you to prove anything, the self who whispers, it's okay to just be, even here, even now, even in the middle of this ache. You are not incomplete because you are healing. You are whole, even as you mend. There is nothing missing from you, only pieces in movement, shifting back into place in a new way, like stones finding balance after an earthquake, like rivers carving new paths after a flood. You are allowed to be both a disaster and a sunrise. You are allowed to not know what's next and still trust that you are worthy of where you are, because worth is not earned, it is remembered, and sometimes it takes a goodbye to bring you back to that remembrance, not because the goodbye was fair, not because it was painless, but because it cleared the fog, because it stripped away the noise, because it brought you here to this stillness, this honesty, this return. You no longer have to fight to hold together what has already unraveled. You only have to honor the thread in your hands now, weaving something simpler, something softer, something truer. Let the past be what it was, not perfect, not wasted, just part of your becoming. Let the future arrive without needing to be controlled. Let now be enough, because in this now, something is awakening, something ancient, something quiet, something you've always carried, but forgot how to see, a knowing that the goodbye was not the end, that even in the leaving, life was opening, that even in the loss, love was not lost. It simply changed form, and you are learning how to hold it differently now, not in your hands, but in your breath, in your gaze, in the way you let the wind touch your face and say, yes, I am still here. Yes, it hurt. Yes, it ended. Yes, it changed you. And yet you are still here, still listening, still alive, still capable of gentleness. In a world that taught you to armor up, still capable of silence. In a world addicted to sound, still capable of beginning again. Not despite the goodbye, but because of it. Because you were brave enough to say it. Because you were soft enough to feel it. Because you were wise enough to stay. And now, look at you, not fixed, not finished, but real, present, alive in a way you weren't before. Like the morning after the storm, like the first green bud after winter, like a soul that knows. Every goodbye, no matter how quiet, carries the echo of something just about to begin. And this is yours.